Hi, everybody. So, we are doing part 3 of Freedom from Fear. Now, I gotta tell you how this drastic change has come in my life. You know, I used to talk to whoever I could talk to. Okay, if you're ever struggling with something, no matter what it is, it's always good to talk to somebody. I didn't really have a close friend that I trusted that much, especially with spiritual things. And I didn't really have someone that I really felt like could give me guidance. You know, I was usually the one that people turn to and say, hey, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And I found that I was blessed with the ability to offer help to people. So I would do the best I could, you know, considering my lack of experience and things and stuff like that. I just tried to share what I thought made sense to me. So we are at part 3, learning to trust God. Now, I struggled with that for so long, you know, because of my experience and I not having the guidance that I needed, I didn't know what it looked like when someone trusted God completely, 100%. My parents always worked. Everybody in my family has been hardworking people and always had jobs. I can't imagine that I've ever known a time, you know, where I never saw my family worked. So, you know, we are not afraid to get our elbows dirty, okay? So we all have been very dependable at our jobs and stuff, very good at it and stuff, and so we knew how to provide for ourselves, you know. So I always was like, okay, if I want something and I can't get it, like, I can't say I can't get it. I've always been able to get what I wanted because I have worked hard. Because I have worked hard to make extra money, to work long hours, to do things that other people wouldn't do, so my bosses would find me more reliable, more dependable, and they knew that I was a yes person. You know, hey, Christine, can you cover? Yep, I'll stay the extra shift, 3rd shift, 4th shift, whatever. You know, oh, you want to stay a few more minutes? Hey, can you come in early? I was always the one. I never told my bosses no. It had to be something that was beyond my control that I absolutely could not change in order for me to say, I can't stay extra today. I was always the one called in. I was always the one, you know. So anyways, point being, I was very dependable at my job. So my bosses learned very quickly that they could rely on me for pretty much everything. You know, so much to the point where there was one time I had a friend's group, a couple friends and everything, family actually, that owned a chain of McDonald's in Clearwater. And at that time I was very young. It was when I started working at McDonald's 16 years old, like I think 15 or 16, I can't remember. Like I said, I've been working forever, so I'm kind of cloudy on that, but I remember becoming friends with them very quickly because they did know it. They memorized my phone number. They thought, oh, so and so called off, okay, call Christine in, you know. So they always were friendly with me, and so we developed a relationship, you know. We developed a friendship relationship, and so like I said, I was there all the time, and you know, we got very close and everything like that. They would trust me to the point where they would, you know, leave me, say, hey, watch the store, the whole store, you know, make sure everybody's doing their job. I gotta go to run errands real quick, I gotta go to the bank, I gotta do whatever. And I was the one that they would leave and pretty much in charge of everything, you know. All the customers come in screaming and hollering everything. Christine, go talk to them. You know, it was funny. So anyways, so I was that trustworthy, you know, and they knew. If I went to where they're at now and I said, hey, you know, I would like to have, you know, management position. Would you give me a management position? I would have a job like that. So I never experienced what it was like to trust God. So when you're transitioning from always working and always having a job your whole life to, you know, there's several times over the past, I would say 7 years, 8 years, that God has been saying to me, hey, trust me. Has been pulling at my heart that he wanted me to trust me for things, and that he wanted me to lean on him and to rely on him. He sent me numerous messages. He had spoke to me numerous times, but I just couldn't feel like, in my heart, I couldn't feel like I could do it. I wanted that because I've seen stories of God's miraculous provision for others. And deep down in my heart, I desired that so much. But when it came to the point in time where I could just completely rest in him with a knowledge that he was going to come through for me for what I needed, I flopped. I had went through evictions twice, in ways that were beyond my control, and I asked God to come through. And when the eviction happened, I was like, where are you, God? Where are you? But my first eviction was in my first apartment with my daughter, and I was still going to Atlanta, Judah, but I was not. Yes, I was learning about spiritual things, but I didn't have Christian guidance still, personally, in my own personal life, about how to walk with God and how to live in a godly way. And so I was very lukewarm, many, 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 many years. And just because you have a gift and calling from God doesn't necessarily mean that you're walking with God. That's a mistake that I discovered, I would say, about 3 years now, maybe going on 4 years. Within 2002, it was 18. So it was about 3 years. It was going on 3 years. Anyways, so I'll tell you guys that about another time. That's a whole nother testimony in itself. So anyways, you can walk with God, or no, I'm so sorry. You can think that you know God. You can know about God. You can have experiences with God. You can have gifts and callings of God. But if you do not seek the face of God and get to know him and really build your relationship with him and really open yourself up to him, it is very possible that you can fool yourself into believing that you're walking as a Christian and that you are living Christian, and fool yourself into having salvation, but you don't actually have salvation. Because even God has a boundary. Sin cannot be where God is. And it's not because he can't handle it. Because if sin enters into God, it dissolves. It does not exist. It can no longer exist. Sin can enter into God and be dissolved, but God cannot enter where sin is. It's not the other way around. Especially when sin is so prominent. And for many, many, many years, because of my lack of guidance, and this is why it's so important as experienced Christians, as walking, living, breathing Christians, not ones who think they are or pretend they are or put a performance on or are stuck in religiousness, but ones who know what love of God is like. It is our job as Christians like that to share that with others, to teach others what loving God is about. And it is about loving unconditionally. That does not mean we agree with everything you do. It's about accepting them for who they are, regardless of their status, regardless of who they are at that moment. You accept them the way that they are. Because God does not condemn us for our status. He does not condemn us for our state. We are only bound and condemned to hell if we do not have a standing. And I'll explain that briefly in a minute. Okay, so if you do not have a standing with God, a live, full-blown, complete standing with him, you are not on the boat. Explain that again. So, for all this time, I was like, okay, well, I see the boat. I'm next to the boat. I'll be all right. I'll get on when I feel like it. You know, that was basically, it all sums up, you know, where it is, where I was. I was like, I am so close to the boat. I can touch it. I can see it. I can be there, you know. And I was thinking that I'm okay just because I have sorry. Woo! Sorry, you guys on Facebook. I just got disconnected for 5 seconds from like one of the things. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh, I fooled myself. Just because I said I was so close to the boat. I know it's there, and I'll grab it when I want to. Basically, that was my mindset. I'm like, it's okay. I'm always going to be next to the boat. I always have access to the boat. I always have, you know, and the boat being Christ, God, being the Spirit of God, being Him with me. You know, He could be with me because I knew who He was and I accepted Him, but I was not necessarily with Him. If that makes sense. Because God cannot forsake Himself, and you accept Him into yourself. But if you could continue to deliberately sin, you're basically taking God away from your life. And He tried to give me the wake-up call for that one time before, and there was about 2 weeks period of time where I did not feel the Spirit of God. Because I know how I feel like now, and I know how I felt like before and afterwards. But there was a 2-week period of time where I did not feel the Spirit of God, and I was losing my mind. I was just like, I felt like, I imagined that I could feel like I was addicted to cigarettes. I can compare it to that. I wasn't addicted to anything else, but I did have an addiction to cigarettes. Okay, so imagine those of you who have an addiction to anything, whether it's coffee, whether it's, you know, certain habits and everything like that. If you don't do it, if you really have an addiction, you don't do it, like, you feel like this, you feel frantic, you know, you feel almost like panicked, like you have to get this, like you have to find out how to get this, you have to find out how to have access to it, and do it right now, because you are in need, and you are in big need. And the people who have addiction to heavier drugs and everything like that may understand that even more completely. So imagine, you know, having that addiction and not being able to get it. And that's what I felt like for the whole entire 2 weeks, where I did not feel the presence of God in my life, and I was losing it. And I was like, and I ended up at the end of the 2 weeks, or yeah, the second half of the 2 weeks, I was crying and saying, God, what happened? Where are you? Why don't I feel you? Da 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 da. You know, I believe He was trying to give me a wake-up call then, but my heart wasn't ready. And so I took that for granted. Once He gave me His Spirit back, I still took it for granted, because I wasn't acknowledging my need for Him. I did not get the full concept of my need for Him. So, I had this huge fear that I was never going to be the person that God would just supernaturally provide for. I thought that I had fears of inadequacy. Let me go through what these different fears are, because I did say that I was going to go through that, the natural fears and the spiritual fears. Oh, I did go over that, but feelings of inadequacy, feelings of insecurity, any insecurities of any type like that, feeling of, you know, depression, feeling of, you know, is this going to be okay? Is that going to be okay? All that is fear. It's a fearful feeling. And because I did feel that for so long, I thought it was such a part of me. I thought that's really who I was. I really was so certain that I was not good enough. And I went through that so much. And even after going through the time of forgiveness from the church that I had, because when I started going back to church altogether, I was attending Prazo, which I have permission to start doing online, which I'm going to do that soon. Once I get all the paperwork and stuff like that, and, the papers that go with that. But I was attending this thing called Prazo. Prazo is the Greek word for to practice or do. That was Pastor Joyce Frolick's baby, the idea. She was the founder of that, and it basically went through those different things and targeted that, and how that was a demon, a fearful demon, and how God is working through you to get it out. And it's amazing how far I've come, but it's crazy how long it took. And it's just because proper guidance is so important. I'm going to say that in every single video that I have and that I do, because godly guidance is so important. It is so vital. It is so vital. Would you trust a treasured and valuable plant to someone who has never been outside, someone who has no experience with taking care of plants, doesn't even know to water it? No, you wouldn't. Okay, so basically, I was given this plant, and I was given no instructions on how to water it and make it grow and nurture it. And the reason I'm going to say that is because I do find it so important, having proper guidance. I didn't know how important it was until I started going to Leslie Health Teaching Center. Proper guidance is so important. So important. It's so important. It's like never having water in your entire life. Your body's going to go malfunctioning. It's like never eating. Your body is going to break down, especially if you don't eat the right foods. Your body is going to fall apart. And that's essentially what happened. So, learning how to trust God. Now, the first time that I remember that I tried to trust God was, like I said, it was one of my evictions. I was praying for him, and I was falling further and further behind on my rent, and I was having trouble with the job that I had. I went to work for a few weeks. I was trying to do in sales. Sometime I'm not going to say the job because I'm not going to badmouth the job. And I wasn't making money there. I was not making any money at all, and I was falling further and further behind my rent. My mom even helped me one time. She covered it for me just to try to help me, be standoff at that. And it didn't happen for me. I ended up losing my place, and I had, to move at the last minute. I was in the middle of the night getting my stuff out of the apartment as fast as I could, because I knew that the sheriff was going to show up any minute to make me get my stuff out. And I was terrified, and I was scared, and I was crying out to God. I said, why didn't you help me, and why didn't you come through for me? But like I said, the lifestyle I had at the time had everything to do with it. And I think I even caused harm to one of the people at my church. And if I ever met that person again, I would sincerely ask for forgiveness. I don't have any contact with this person, or I don't remember this person's last name. Maybe I could have looked him up on Facebook or something like that, and just ask for forgiveness, like was done for me, because I think that I caused spiritual harm for that person, and I think that I caused that person to really question who they were and how they were, and I know that I'm going to be held accountable for that, and I hope one day that I can meet them and ask for forgiveness for that. So, if you're not walking with God and you ask Him to help you, He won't. He won't in the way that you think that He should. He will push you in different directions, He will cause you to go in different directions, to try to get you to wake up, to try to get your attention, because he allows things to happen to get your attention. And I was so devastated that I was getting evicted, and I, in my heart, grew further from my ability to trust God, I feel like. And at that time, God he had shown me all the times in my life that he was there for me. He gave me a flashback of all the things he did to look out for me and to have my back and to just be there for me. And so I thought that he would do it that time, but it didn't happen. And so I went through a whole process with that, and I was staying with a friend of mine for a while, and things happen and everything. There's a lot of things that happen, and me and my mom were struggling at the time, and I went through a lot of heartache because I really felt like God should have came through for me then, but I wasn't what I should have been at that time. And I think it allowed it to happen because of what I did to the person that went to the church at that time. And God does allow things like that to happen as correction. God does give us correction because he loves us, because he wants us to do the right thing, and because everything got destroyed at that time. And I didn't know better, so I didn't know that. I felt like my heart turned more away from God because I felt like he failed me, So years go by and everything like that, and he blessed me with this wonderful person in my life who she was not exactly Christian at the time. She believes in God and stuff like that, but she's not a following Christian. She lives her life, and but I love her to pieces. She's like my sister. I would do anything for her, and I know that she would do anything for me. And if I called her and asked her for anything like that, it's not, we have that relationship that if I am in desperate need of something and I call her and I ask her for something, it's usually because I need it. Sometimes we just sit there and talk for hours. Sometimes we don't, and we don't have to be around each other at a time. We've been friends for so long, like we're at that point where we don't have to see each other every day or talk to each other every day. We can go weeks and stuff not talking to each other at all, but I know that she's my sister. I call her my sister, and we're like family and stuff like that, and we love each other. We fight and argue and disagree and stuff, but then that doesn't change the fact that we love each other. Not her and her younger sister and stuff like that too. She's like my sister too, even though she's mad at me right now. But it doesn't matter, because I love her to death too, and I would do the same thing. I would do anything for her. So that they were a blessing. They've been a blessing in my life, and she's had my back so many times, and I know that God gave her to me because she's had my back so many times when I felt like my family didn't, when I felt like I was by myself. Like I didn't have to feel like I was by myself. I didn't feel like I didn't have enough, because when I didn't have enough, she came through a lot of times, so many times I can't even count. So I had friends with her for many years, but these are not super spiritual, go to church every single time, maybe she reads the Bible every day and stuff. I'm not really even sure right now. But it doesn't matter. It's like, she's my sister and stuff like that, and she was the one who's there for me. God has, given her to me. She's my gift. Stuff, because she's such a wonderful person, and it's crazy because she's held me up through so much, and even to this day and stuff like that. It's just been, she's always been there. And even when I got into a relationship with my youngest daughter's father, at that point, because between my oldest daughter's father and my youngest daughter's father, I was really just not wanting a relationship. I stayed out of relationship for, it was 9, maybe 10 years before I even thought about having a relationship, before I even looked at it. I just didn't want to have anything to do with anybody, because the relationships I was in were so horrible to me, and it was so devastating, and it was so heartbreaking. I went through a lot of abusive relationships, and she was still there. Like, she was that one. You know, you need to come pick me up. You know, if I get thrown in jail for any reason, I'm calling her, and she's there. But she's, I mean, like I said, she's been right there and stuff, and I went through this hard time, and, you know, during this, and this relationship had me where I was even thinking about killing myself for a while. I wanted to get out of this relationship so bad. So bad. And there were so many times where he was screaming at me and calling me names, and I'm sitting there driving, I'm like, I could just turn this wheel and go right into that railing and he would be dead. So would I. But he would be dead. You know, and I thought that. I was at that place. That's how dark it was for me. That's how much hurt I went through. That's how much stuff I experienced. And I was just not in a good place. So again, I'm like, God, I don't trust you. I want to get out of this, but I don't trust you to provide for me. This was 3 years before I got out of the relationship. I was in that one for 7 years. And I said, God, I just don't trust you to provide for me. I don't think that you will do it. I don't think you'll come through. I see you go through, and I said, I see you go through, and everybody's talking about how you supernaturally provide for them. You just gave them suddenly, you just gave them this and that, and you brought them things that they needed when they needed it. But I've never seen you do that for me. I accused him of not being there for me, of not being faithful. You think that stopped him? No. Hurricane happened towards the end of a relationship, flooded the entire back half of the house. It was a multi-layered house, so we had a lower living room, and it was gorgeous. And then it had step up, so you step down into the living room, step up into the kitchen, dining room area, and everything like that, and then you step down into the Florida room or family room, whatever it was back there and stuff. But it was a beautiful house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in Newport Richie, and it flooded the whole back half of the room, up to the step, everything like that, like all the way up. It was water all over the place, and God used that. Even after me screaming at him that I didn't trust him, that he wasn't going to come through for me, he used that. I had my dad, I had both of my daughters, and it was just going to be me. And I needed to get out of there. Excuse me. I needed to get out of there, and I needed to get out of there quickly, and I needed to be able to do it without him. Because at that time I wasn't working, or I just went back to work, and all my finances and income was going to take care of my dad. My dad did have a significant amount of income every month, but it wasn't enough to give him full-time care and supply all of his medical stuff and supply anything else that he needed, extra stuff like that. If I wanted to go to church and stuff, I had to pay extra for that time. I had to pay somebody else to be there. Anytime I wanted to go out or have an outing of any kind of whatsoever, I had to pay somebody. So my finances were very strapped. So when that Hurricane Irma, it was Hurricane Irma, I remember. No, it wasn't. It was the one before that. It was Hermine. Because I was already in my new place. So anyways, if the FEMA came out and everything like that, and the FEMA people came out and they inspected the house and they saw the damage that was there, and I told them, I said, because at that time my daughter's father was not there, he was at work, and neither were the other people in the household, because they said they only provide, for a certain number of people in the house. And so I applied for myself, and I said, it's just going to be me, my 2 daughters, and my dad, and we need, a 2-bedroom, 1 bath and everything. And God used them to come through. They came through. I got my first and last month's rent and security completely paid for, and I was able to move in at the drop of a hat. And it was amazing how God came through for me, and I realized that he came through for me, and I just started crying. I was so emotional at that time because I said, I'm so sorry. I just screamed at you a couple years ago that I didn't even trust you, and now here I am. And I stayed there for quite some time, until it was time to change. It's time to change when things are okay for quite some time, and then all of a sudden there's problems that seem to come out of nowhere. And that's basically how everything happened. Problems started coming out of nowhere, and at that time I knew I needed to move. So I ended up in another place. And God provided for me that too. He provided that for me. You know, He made it possible for me to move there. And it was just amazing. And it was so wonderful how everything started, because, you know, in that place they didn't accept help, outside help from anybody or anything. So I had to figure out everything on my own. And, you know, I was there and I met a couple people I became friends with at the time, and everything started going really smoothly for me. And so that was another time that God provided for me. And so I started thinking about all these things. And one of the biggest things that impacted me the following year after I moved into the other place, this was after my dad passed and everything, I ended up getting another place with just me and my girls. That's when Crazy Psycho came in. That's where I had the gun in my face and all that stuff. And God protected me then, okay? God protected me. And I'm still friends with a couple of people that were there that can tell you what happened. But this person came and attacked me with a gun. Put a gun in my face. Put a knife in my face. Threatened my life. And God used, because He claimed the member of something. I'm not going to get into detail, and I'm not going to say who, I'm not going to say what. All that stuff's not important. But He claimed to be a part of something that He wasn't a part of. And when they found out that He was doing that, God turned their heart against Him in my favor. Remember where it said God changed the heart of Pharaoh? Well, God took Pharaoh's armies, okay? Let's just say this. This Pharaoh was determined to attack me, determined to come against me, and determined to take my life, because he had tried on numerous occasions. Okay, that's the first time I started trying to do these videos in my scientific study of the Bible and stuff, that I'm still going, and I'm still got it going, and I'm gonna get more videos ready. I'm doing multiple things at once, so it's taking more time to get that spread out and stuff. But anyways, that's the first time that God really came through for me, and I knew that only God could have done that, because there is no way anybody from the street could tell you. You don't turn your back on the brother. You don't do that, especially for a female that nobody's having sex with, nobody's dating, there was actually a few of them that wanted to date me, wanted to be with me, so, but I was not interested in like that. I said, no, thank you. That kind of lifestyle was just not my thing, so. Didn't mean that they didn't want me. They still wanted to be with me and stuff, and God used all that in my favor. They defended me, bullet to bullet. They were ready. Okay? They were ready with their lives. It has impacted me so much that God did that. I cannot stop thinking about it. I cannot turn away from that. I can't turn away from that thought. And I always remember the person and the people involved, and I tell them all the time how much favor that God is going to give them because of what they did. They don't realize they stood up for a child of God. They didn't even know that they were doing that, but they did it. God looks at them for that. God's going to give them what they need, and God has blessed their lives majorly. God has blessed their lives majorly. And it's because of what they did. It's because of what they did. So after that moment, and how many times I saw God defend me during that time, because it wasn't just one time they did that. Even though everything happened that way, that didn't happen. It happened multiple times. He chased me down in cars. I mean, I did not know how well I could drive until he started trying to chase me down in a car to kill me. You know, when you're put in that position, you really find out whether or not you can drive. Because I was flying that SUV through. I didn't stop at any stop signs, any red lights. I flipped around them turns and didn't even flip the SUV. Didn't tip side to side. So I knew how to handle that vehicle because I was going all over the place. And yet God defended me every single time and brought this man to his knees in front of me asking me for forgiveness. And I'm no longer associating with the other people, but if they were still associating with me, they could tell you this person was in tears saying, please forgive me. God can do that. He's that powerful. And after that moment, I could not stop thinking about how God came through. So it caused me to start looking more and more and more about God coming through for me. I overstayed my time there, ended up having to leave. Long story short, I ended up in a hotel with me and my kids. I was working 2 full-time jobs and a part-time job just so we had enough. Because $1,400 a month on minimum wage, 2 minimum wage jobs, not getting any food stamps, still having to pay car insurance, paying for a car because I had to get a new car at the time. All those expenses that run with staying in a hotel is more than the average person would spend. So, I was so desperate. God gave me a good man to help. He had a good heart. You know, he wasn't that great, but as a person, he had a good heart, and he was there, and he did come and help keep me and my girls safe and stuff like that, and we were there for a couple of years, and that's where I got my awakening. You know, I was smoking weed for many, many years. I smoked weed like if they were rolled in a pack of cigarettes at that time, I smoked weed the equivalent of maybe 2 or 3 packs a day. Okay, I had them rolled up. Like cigarettes. I was so particular about how they looked, how they were shaped, and everything like that. And I rolled them up like cigarettes. They looked like cigarettes with green stuff in the side. Didn't have tobacco. They had weed. So I constantly smoked that. I was smoking left and right, back and forth. I know that myself and all my stuff reeked of weed. Had to. No way. There's no way you can smoke that much and not reek of weed. It's just not possible. So, one of the times during the hotel, and someone was talking to God, and I was asking him for a really godly man, because I knew that I wasn't going to end up with the person that I was with. I just had it in my heart. One of the things, though, I kind of thought I did, like, part of me thought he was, and part of me thought he wasn't. And he always told me, he's like, you know what, I really don't like that you smoke weed. He's like, I really don't want you to. I'm not really for that. It's never been my thing. I've never done it myself. He said he hasn't done it himself. And he's like, I'm not really for it. The weed is just not a big thing for me. And so I said, you know what, out of respect for you, and I love you, and I care about you, I said I'm not going to do it. But I wanted to. It didn't take away my want to. And once in a while, I would do it without his knowledge, and like with him not being there, or I would pressure him into being like, okay, and then he'll turn his back. But then I was talking to God one time, and he said, I don't remember how we got to that point of the conversation, but the most important part of the conversation is what I remember. And he asked me, he said, you love me, right? And I said, of course, God, I love you. Of course, God. You know, I've known you my whole life. I know who you are. I've had a relationship with you. You know, I still thought at that time that I had a really close relationship with him. And it wasn't what I thought it was. And then God was like, okay. He said, would you love the man that I sent for you? And I said, of course. And then he goes, what if the man I sent for you didn't want you to smoke weed? Would you stop? And I said, sure, but until he comes and stuff, I'll probably keep going. You know, I really told God that. And then he goes, sorry, because it hits my heart every time I talk about it. He said, if you would stop for the man that I sent for you, why won't you stop for me? God asked me that. If I would stop for the man that I would love, that would love me. How come I couldn't stop for God? Not because it's good, it's bad. Because at that time it was an idol in my life. I did it that much. And me doing that was the idol. Because I treasured that more. I said, of course, God, I love you. Of course I would stop for you. And I just sat in tears because I said to myself, how could I love that more than I love God? And I said, that's what I've been doing all this time. I've been wanting and desiring that more than God. And I tell you what, from that moment forward, never again. I promised him I wouldn't. I said I won't. Just because I love you and because you don't want me to. Not because it's good or bad or anything against it. I still don't have a mindset against it. But because God asked me to put him before that, of course, my desire for that completely changed. My want for that completely changed. And I tell you, to this day, I could walk into a room and it could be greenhouse like you couldn't see in front of you, and it would not have any effect on me. Even to the point where it does not even get me high. Not even the contact, because let me tell you, if you go into a greenhouse room that much, that's thick, you are going to get a contact. And I have walked through smoke like that. I have been around people who've done it, and I don't even think twice. The smell of it doesn't trigger anything in me to make me want to. The thought about it doesn't trigger anything in me to make me say, I miss that. I have never once, actually, I'm telling you right now, that I have never once, after that day, even thought to myself, boy, I miss doing that. That has never come across my mind. Because when God gets a hold of something about you that he wants to change, he will do it. So if you can't change your mindset about fear, and I haven't even got to my writings, so there's going to be a part 4. I'm just telling you something. You know what? I'm going to just rename this because this is not even a part 3. I didn't even get to my writing or anything. I was just talking about how to trust God. Okay, how to trust God. That's going to be the name of this. If you want to trust God, if you have that back in your mind where you say, boy, I wish I could just believe him. Boy, I wish I could just trust in his name. Have that bataz. So what the word I was supposed to be getting to, the word I was supposed to be telling you about is called batah. Okay? That means you got to the point in your relationship with God where you know. Okay? I'll give you a little taste of what's happening. Okay? People believe in Santa Claus. Kids believe in Santa Claus. Kids believe in the fairy tales, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy. That's something a lot of children believe in. You know? But you have to grow into the point where you no longer believe that God exists. You have to get into batah, where you know that God is. Okay? And that's it. You know that God is. And you may ask yourself, God is what? Well, until I do my next video, until you see the next video up here, you need to look for that yourself. What is God to you? Who is he to you? Answer that question. And you may begin to unravel how to get to the place where you batah. It's time for me to wrap this up. I gave a little bit of a testimony and I didn't even get to my teaching. But I did get permission for this because I am still teaching about the notes. I gave a little bit of a testimony. This is the church that I go to that has so drastically changed my life, because all these evolvements in my Christianity and in my belief and trust in God has everything to do with where you go. Okay? It has everything to do with who feeds you. So you know why I have gotten to where I've gotten now? This place. See it? I'm trying to get all three of y'all to see it. There we go. This is the location. This is where they're at. They have a Bible museum. This is just a small fraction of how this place looks. Okay, this is Tabernacle in the Wilderness. It is a 2-scale replica of the actual tabernacle in the Bible. To the measurements. To the T. The only thing that is not to the T is materials, because that would be highly expensive. And, yeah. So, this is the place that has brought me to where I am right now in my walk with God. This is the place that has gotten me to the point where I am now relying on the provision of God. Because this is what He promised to me. And this is what He's been trying to teach me for years and years and years, is how to believe and trust in Him. And now I'm there. I'm learning. I'm in the middle of learning right now. But I have chosen to learn about this. I have chosen to learn this walk with Him so that I can be as effective as our teacher, Leslie Hale, is, because he has so many years, 60 plus years of teaching Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, and they are priceless teachings. They are treasures. Those treasures alone are invaluable. You cannot put a price. You cannot put a label. You cannot put a value, because there's no way. How do you put a value on knowledge and experience and truth? That's what this place is about. Truth, experience, knowledge. Your life will be changed. It's not a gimmick. Your life will be changed. Your heart and mind will be changed just stepping foot in this place. Because God's truth is alive there. It is fully alive. Anyways, when you go there to this place, okay, me personally, I am asking you to bring an offering of any kind, of any amount, to take it to them, give it to them, because after your experience here, you will never be the same. You will never think or feel the same, or you won't. You can't. You go there for 6 months and you want something to change in your life. If you're going to church and you're like, man, everything just seems so blah, like I'm not going anywhere. You want to go somewhere? Go to this place. This one. This one. This one. This one. You will be changed for good. Take them some money. They're not asking me to do this. I'm telling you. I recommend it. Anything. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm recommending you go there with an offering of any kind, because you will take away a feeling and an experience that you will not get any other place. Okay? Tomorrow I'll do my real part 3. Okay? Love you guys. See you next time.